Good evening, fearless, fabulous community members, leaders, students, parents, all of our wonderful, amazing community members of Stockton Unified School District. My name is Nicole Anderson, and I will be moderating our community dialogue today. Number 5, can't believe how we've gotten to come together and have some dialogue about addressing institutional racism in Stockton and the community. And so before we get started, just a couple things to share real quick with you. Again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. A couple things we want to share in terms of interpretation services. If you are in need of interpretation services, there are several spaces, again, on the web, I'm sorry, on the Zoom space where you can click for interpretation. We actually have interpretation now that is available. All right, Veronica, are you want to jump in for this piece, or do we want to go ahead and get started? I know our interpreters are on the line as well.
We will go ahead and get started.
Right.
Thank you so much.
All right. So as we get started, Dr. Shelley, take it away.
Good evening, Stockton Unified School District, community, parents, students. It is our honor to be here with you this evening. We know there are many things that you could be doing, and we just are so grateful that you've tuned in for a community dialogue. We have been having these since June and are committed to having community voice. Our school district continues to evaluate and reevaluate how we work with our community. And we just can't thank you enough for having a voice. Each and every panelist on tonight's dialogue was carefully selected. Great representation, both from Stockton Unified and our community. We are very excited this evening to start a little bit earlier. We got some feedback that a lot of our students need to work on their studies. So we are going to start beginning these at 6 p.m. and we will kind of continue that as we move forward. This evening, I am here in place of our superintendent, Mr. Brian Biederman. He wishes very much that he could be here this evening. He had a very difficult day. One of our students has passed away, and so he spent the day with the family and the community, and his heart is with us this evening, and he just can't wait to be on the very next community dialogue. So I will be here this evening along with our amazing panelists. So with that said, I will turn it over to Nicole. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Shelley. We appreciate you, Dr. Shelley. Sure appreciate it. And our hearts and prayers definitely go out to the family. As we know, this is one of your beloved community members who lost his life way too soon. So we just want to acknowledge that. And also just want to acknowledge the pain, right? The pain of even us being here today. There is so much pain that we've experienced over the years. And want to just acknowledge the struggle of the community, but also want to acknowledge the tenacity, the perseverance, the resilience of the community, even in the midst of such hard times. Between COVID-19 impacting families to this day, impacting how we, even go to school, go to work. I mean, it's completely just unreal, as we call it. But also just acknowledging the impact of this kind of racial dust that's been kicked up. And just knowing that this is hard times. So I want to acknowledge that, acknowledge the community, acknowledge all who have joined us on the panel to take part in this difficult conversation, but yet much needed. But I also want to say that I'm very, very excited to join you all, because this, if not now, then when, right? This is a time in history where we are just being called as educators, as community members, to come together and address these issues that have been plaguing our communities for way too long. And what a great opportunity. I want to acknowledge Brian Biederman and the governing board, any governing board members who are here today, any community members here today, all of the dignitaries, elected officials, all of those who represent those positions of power and leadership, to really, that we want to thank you for allowing this space to happen. We know it takes leadership to have a vision to allow this space to happen. And so I want to say there are a lot of school districts that are embarking upon this work around racial and educational equity. And having community dialogues, opening this up, is not something that's a normal process. So you're on number 5, which is powerful. And I just want to acknowledge that this is amazing work you're doing, and it's still a journey. We have a long ways to go, but we're going to use tonight as another step forward. So again, just want to acknowledge the community in that. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the fact that we have the opportunity tonight to go a little deeper around the conversation around this concept of racism, institutional racism. And so as we do that tonight, I want to make sure that there's a couple of things we cover as we get ready to get started. Before even jumping into that, though, I want to remind us about some of the processes tonight, the agenda. We're going to have an opportunity to hear from our panelists and do introductions in a moment. We're going to have a chance to hear from the community in terms of public comment and also questions that you may be able to ask to our panelists through our Q&A feature, which you should see at the bottom of your screen. And so we have pre-selected questions that have come in, and we also have questions that the panelists are going to be prepared to answer and discuss. But we do want to hear from the community, and we will do our best to answer all of those questions tonight, but know that we have future dialogues to continue to deepen this discussion. As community members who are joining us, of course, we're being live streamed on Facebook, but also many of you who are actually on this particular webinar, you will be muted for the majority of the time. If you do wish to speak and share, we're going to ask that you do so during public comment. And also, if you want to do Q&A, there will be an opportunity for you to use the raise hand feature so that you can share your desire to speak. And so we're going to go through those. I'll remind you again as we go through the program. But I also want to remind you that this is a space where we want to ensure that there's safety. I remind us each time we come together that engaging in the work of educational and racial equity, it needs to be safe space. So tonight we're going to continue to honor that. We've been doing an amazing job in all of our dialogues. Safety means that everyone has a place here tonight, that no one will be judged or will be attacked for their perspective, their truth that they share, but that all of us have a place here to engage in this work. This is about coming together. It's about meeting people where they are. And so it's important that we have safe space tonight, but also as a moderator, I'm going to push us to be brave, right? We want to actually address these issues and also think about what are we going to do? What is our commitment? And so this requires safety to happen. And as a community, Stockton has to recognize that safety is going to take time to create this space for us to do this work and really close racial equity gaps. I do want to acknowledge that safety and discomfort are two different things. So as we come together tonight, we're going to embrace discomfort, understanding that we cannot grow, we cannot address these issues without feeling some level of discomfort, whether that's emotionally, mentally. It really is hard work. But I know Stockton Unified is committed to this, and so I'm excited to join you tonight in this space. I want us to remember our 4 agreements that we've shared each time. We ask that each of you think about how you're going to stay engaged, even when it's uncomfortable, and that you're going to agree to experience discomfort, being okay with embracing what I call the struggle. Sometimes there are going to be some things heard tonight that may not sit with everyone. But the reality is we want to go to that third piece of speaking our truth and understanding that everyone's truth needs to be a part of this conversation and that everyone's truth may not be others' truth. So we're going to embrace cultural differences, different perspectives, but understand that that may cause discomfort. But again, safety, discomfort, 2 different things. And we want to make sure we embrace discomfort because that's how we grow. And last but not least, tonight, we have to expect and accept non-closure. There are going to be moments that we're going to have some unanswered questions. There are going to be moments that we may not feel like we've solved this problem. There are going to be moments that you feel like we're not going too deep or we're not going fast enough. But the reality is this is a journey. And the journey is that there is always going to be non-closure because everyone's at a different place in their journey. So we want to make sure that as tonight we build and continue to build our safe space as a community, panelists, just want to appreciate all of you for engaging in this space and knowing that it has to be safe tonight as we unpack this conversation about race, which historically has not always been safe. And so what I want to do at this moment in time is I want to take a moment to acknowledge the community who's joining us tonight before we introduce our panelists. So there's going to be a poll feature that actually comes on the screen just to give us an idea of who's with us tonight. We want to see who's represented in the community and just want to welcome you again. So please take a moment. Those of you that are actually here on the webinar, please go ahead and take a moment to share who you are, who you're representing. Those that are on Facebook Live, we appreciate you and acknowledge you for joining. But we're going to see who's actually on our webinar tonight, just to give our panelists a sense of who's represented. We got our teachers on today. All right. Teachers had a long day with distance learning. Bless your hearts. Long day. We appreciate you joining us tonight as well, teachers. Our students joining us, excellent. Some of our district and site leadership, we appreciate you joining tonight. Our classified support staff, what would we do without you? Thank you so much for joining us. I see we have a parent, grandparent, auntie, uncle, our extended family. We just appreciate you joining us tonight as well. And so we'll wait a few more moments. We have about half of you all that have shared who's on the call, but we'd hope that all of you can just share with us again who's joining us tonight. We'll go ahead and share that in a moment. Again, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you again for joining us. Those of you that are just joining on, again, we are continuing our conversations about recognizing and responding to institutional racism. All right. So we go ahead and share our results with our community to see who's on. But again, welcome teachers, counselors, our mental health staff. Thank you, classified staff. Thank you, district and site leadership, our extended family members, and of course, our students who we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, students. So thank you so much. So as we get ready to take the poll off, what I want to do is do a special introduction of our panelists today. And our panelists are coming to you from a diverse group of folks. Again, this is dialogue number 5. And so we've had some amazing panelists who have come on and joined us. And this is our perspectives that we need to keep bringing together to talk about this work. And so what I'm going to do is introduce each. I'll call your name. And then if you can just give a 30-second elevator speech about who you are, where you're from, and why you want to be here tonight. And so the key word is 30-second elevator speech, because you can have plenty of time to actually respond and share more about your story. So I'm going to start with our amazing student, Reina Caranco Reyes. Please share who you are, young lady.
Hi, my name is Reina Caranco Reyes. I'm from Franklin High School. I'm a junior, and I am also the SUSD Board Student Representative. I'm here tonight to just listen to everybody's stories and be here and be supportive.
Thank you, Reina. We appreciate you, girl. Thank you so much. Hazem, would you jump on in? Hazem Ali from Edison. Jump on in and share who you are.
Hi, my name is Hazem Ali. I'm from Edison High School. I am the ASB Ethnic Studies Student Director at the school, meaning I deal with all the cultural aspects on campus. I'm here to share my stories as well as listen to everybody else's stories and give insight to the community about how I can help and how they can help.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Thank you. So glad you're with us tonight. Sharon Barnes, why don't you jump in, share who you are and why you're here tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Sharon Barnes. I'm the Director of Educational Equity for the Stockton Unified School District, and just really pleased and honored to be here this evening. And I'm here, the work that I do in my position is just really work with our stakeholders in our school district to look at our equity gaps and try to make sure that our students have opportunity and access. So really excited about hearing from our community, just learning how we can support our community and our students and just make sure that students have an opportunity to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate it. Jillian Glende. Go ahead, Jillian.
Hi, everyone.
I mispronounced your last name, didn't I?
That's all right. Everybody does. Jillian Glende. I am the district coordinator for the PLUS program. I am a school counselor program specialist, and I also coordinate our youth development aspects of our Tobacco Youth Prevention Education Grant. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I am really here today to bring about some awareness for our youth and to help empower our youth to be advocates for this work at our schools.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jillian. Appreciate you being here and all your hard work. Let's see, Bruce Roberson. So excited you get to join us today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bruce Roberson. I'm the NAACP Education Committee. I just retired from teaching at Lincoln High School for the past 15 years. Prior to that, I was in the Silicon Valley bringing you great devices like the DVD players and the cell phones and the broadband network that you're using now. That was back in the 90s. I also worked in the oil industry for 10 years. I went to an HBCU Prairie View. I'm an original civil rights movement person. I was 16 in 1968 when Martin Luther King was killed, and I grew up in Texas. So I was in the heart of the original civil rights movement. So I'm here to basically carry this work forward and really see if we can't make a significant improvement in our student outcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Powerful. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bruce. We appreciate you. Officer Angie Andrews.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So I am Detective Angie Andrews from SUSD PD. I used to be SRO at Franklin High School. Oh my gosh, I have a lot of titles. I'm one of the POA officers at SUSD PD. I'm one of the head instructors for the GREAT program, and I'm here to make a difference.
Yeah, powerful. Thank you so much. Do I call you officer or detective? Because I just heard you say you got like 4 different hats. I want to get it right.
I just got promoted to detective. You want to call me officer? I'll listen to both. I don't care.
No, I'm calling you detective because we
Okay.
appreciate. Congratulations on that too. So thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. Alicia Graham, Alicia N. Graham, by the way.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Alicia Graham, one of the regional directors in educational services within Stockton Unified School District. And I have the amazing privilege of supporting 14 of our schools within the district. It is the most favorite job I have ever had in my whole entire life. I am here because I'm really passionate about equity, about inclusion, and about bringing community together. So I am here to help continue to move the work forward, but also to really listen to our community to see that what they need and how we can continue to support and partner together.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here, Alicia. Really do.
Thank you.
Carrie Nelson.
Hi, I am Carrie Nelson, and I am an English learner instructional coach with Stockton Unified in the Language Development Office. Absolutely love my position. I love advocating for English learners. My entire life has been passionate with equity work for all marginalized groups, and that's always been at the forefront of everything I try to do. And I'm just really, really excited to be here tonight to contribute in any way I can, to hear from our community, and just hear perspectives and where we're going with this work. I think we're in a really critical moment right now in history of making some movement and creating more equity in the world. And I'm just excited to be a part of that in any way I can.
Powerful. Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate you being here. And next we have Monica Hernandez. Please jump on in.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Monica Hernandez. I am an ELA instructional coach for K-8, and I provide services to August and Fremont Elementary primarily, but I help wherever I can. And I'm here to listen, to learn, to advocate, to empower. I get the privilege and the honor of working with so many different teachers in all stages of their career, and I don't take that lightly. So whatever it is I can do to support them and influence them and move them toward more equitable practices, that's what I commit to doing.
Thank you. So glad you're here, Monica. Appreciate you. And last but not least, Gamal Salama. Go ahead and jump in, Gamal.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Gamal Salama, and I am the proud principal of Franklin High School. And I'm here tonight because I'm an equity warrior who started the journey 3 years ago, learning more about myself, learning more about our community, and I'm here to continue this journey with listening to our community, which I do every week through the Principal Coffee Hours, and I will continue to have my door open for all our Stockton Unified community, which is I'm so proud to be part of for the last 19 years, Stockton Strong.
Yeah, powerful. Thank you, Gamal. Appreciate it. And all of you, just thank you again for being here tonight, for being bold and courageous to stand in front of our community to talk about the tough conversations that happen around addressing racism. Just appreciate you. I know that you all represent your own individual perspective, personal perspectives, but also recognize your representation of many community members based on your positions. And want to remind the community that while we have these various perspectives, they're not the only perspectives. And so we know that we'll hear different voices tonight. And it doesn't represent everyone, but it definitely gives you a sense of, you have a principal voice, you have a detective voice, you have a NAACP voice, you have so many different perspectives, but know that there's so many more that aren't at the table tonight. But we're going to do our best to represent, based on what you have here, a powerful group of people who have insight and perspective on racism. So before we start our first question, I want to do something real quick with you that's really important around setting context for our work tonight. As I mentioned at our last community forum, we had a chance to go a lot deeper in talking about racism. And tonight our goal is to go even deeper, right? And really be bold and courageous about calling the issues out about race but knowing that we have a journey still in this process. And so on the screen, what you notice is just real quick context for our community to make sure you understand the conversations we've been having in the context of this work is we're talking about racial equity in education. And so it's really important we recognize that there's kind of 3 schools of thought that we want to really center our work around as we build our awareness and our capacity to lead this work. And it's important that all of us recognize what racial equity is. We have to define it and make sure we're really clear about what it is. We also have to recognize what are the clear challenges to racial equity as we continue to deepen our work. Recognizing also that there are clear actions we have to take to address racial equity, and doing that with what I call a systems lens. And so as the group begins to talk tonight about racism, I want to make sure we're clear about where we're going. That racial equity is not racial equality. Okay, they are not giving, it's not giving the same thing to students of color because they all mark the same box, right? We got to break that down. That we also have to recognize that some students of color need more than others. Okay, some need more than others. Notice what I'm doing, I'm calling out students of color, right? Because when we talk about racial equity in education, we're addressing the issues around race, those boxes that our kids mark when we talk about demographic data. And so we're gonna unpack that tonight and really get beyond even that word race, but we gotta understand the context of where we're going. This work has started because of the way that we actually sort and select kids based on race. So I'm saying students of color very broadly right now, but our panel is gonna actually help us break down what that really means, okay? For the context of this, recognizing I'm calling out students of color, I'm not calling out kids with disabilities, I'm not calling out kids in poverty, I'm not calling out kids based on their LGBTQ needs. I know that all of those are very important. But when we do racial equity work in education, we're gonna talk about race. And often what happens is we get very uncomfortable and the work stops and we start to talk about other identities, which there are intersectionalities for kids, obviously. But I wanna make sure we really call out clearly that there are some clear racial inequities based on the box that kids mark around their ethnicity, their race. I also want us to recognize when we talk about racial equity, students demonstrate success in different ways. So one of the things we have to unpack is recognizing that historically the data shows that kids of color have not been as successful in schools. But we also know that there have been limited metrics to show that success, and that historically the metrics that we use for success have not necessarily been rooted in what we call equitable practices. So we're going to call out some of those things about our testing practices, right? Some of our metrics that have actually had history of perpetuating racist practices going all the way back, if you do the history of public education back in the 1600s. It wasn't always designed to be equitable for kids based on their ethnicity. Lastly, I want to make sure we remember that this work is about being intentional, about shifting our mindsets, shifting our practices and our policies. That's what racial equity work is about, making that change and being intentional, and that we prioritize this work. It is the work. It's not a check the box. It's not some side item. It is the work when we talk about doing racial equity work in education. So we have to unpack that tonight, and I know our panelists are going to do a great job of helping us with seeing how that looks. But again, racial equity is not racial equality. It's about giving students of color what they need and when they need it. What are the challenges? We got to recognize, although we are excited in Stockton to do this work and coming together and rolling our sleeves up, it is not going to come without challenges. There is no way to opt out of this. And so it is uncomfortable. We're interrupting a system that wasn't designed to be equitable. So what that means is we got to anticipate the challenges that are going to come. Those challenges include the fact that the history of public education, again, was rooted in racial inequity. So that's going to be a challenge in itself, is this is the system we actually work in and we go to school in. There are going to be some people who don't agree with this work and don't understand this work and will be resistant to change. And that is going to be a huge challenge where we're going to talk about how do we address people who may be resistant, maybe not understand, may be afraid, may not feel safe in this work, so they don't want to change or don't want to engage. We got to talk about that and have real conversation. Privilege and entitlement of those who have the potential to oppress. So privilege and entitlement really speak about power, right? And so those of us that carry power, that is the ability to influence others. Those of us that have power over our students and our families. It is imperative we recognize where privilege and entitlement might lie, that we may be able to use our privilege to be able to back out of this work. Or whenever we feel uncomfortable, then we don't want to address the work. And that's privilege. I have the ability to have that benefit. And so we're going to have to call that out when we talk about privilege. We're going to have to call it out. We'll talk later about the concept of white privilege, the concept of whiteness. For those of you that really want to do your work, go do the history of whiteness and recognize as we break down these racial constructs, whiteness is not necessarily just about race and ethnicity. It's about power structures that are rooted in history. So when we start breaking that down and we start recognizing what that privilege looks like, we start to recognize that racism harmed everybody, but there are people who benefit from privilege and others who don't. So we have to recognize where that looks, and we have to call out our own privilege that we may perpetuate oppression, even for us who identify as people of color. We may actually perpetuate oppression because we work in a system that was not designed to be equitable. So it's going to be hard dialogue, but we got to recognize the privilege and entitlement that exists that may be a barrier to this work. Implicit bias, stereotypes. We're going to have our panelists unpack that and just recognizing again, implicit bias, those blind spots, right? Those subconscious attitudes and beliefs about people based on stereotypes and narratives that we've heard since we were little babies. Implicit bias starts early, and every one of us should be raising our hand saying, I have bias. You can't opt out of it. You have blind spots that show favor towards others and lack of favor towards others who don't necessarily identify with your own identity. So this is something that's a barrier. We have to constantly be interrupting stereotypes that are associated with our babies, our students, that aren't true, but actually we play those things out and perpetuate them in our schools. Last but not least, institutional racism, right? That's why we're here, right, to talk about it. The system of education actually, unfortunately, is full of policies and practices that have become institutional. They have become part of our system, and they have disadvantaged groups of kids for years and years and years. So they have become part of just what we do. So it's important we have to recognize that that's the barrier in itself is our system and its history. But what's exciting is, guess what? We can do something about it, right? Once we know better, we do better. And that's a huge piece of this work. I spent few moments talking about what racial equity is and what the challenges are. We got to be aware of those. So that's half the battle is be aware. But the other half is we got to do something about it. So once we know better, we're going to have to address racism through a system approach. And that systems approach is going to require us to change policies and practices that have not worked well for our kids of color. We're going to have to change policy and practices. We're going to have to ensure that we address the resources that may not be given to the kids who need it the most. That's going to be uncomfortable for some. This is where resistance to change comes, because it's like, hey, you're taking from my kid and giving to those kids. That is going to be a challenge, but we have to shift resources to kids who need it the most. But once those structures have changed, that's imperative. We got to remember three critical things. We got to make sure our relationships are healthy amongst all of our stakeholders. We can no longer have barriers. If we don't have those healthy relationships, then those policies and practices actually won't last. If we don't have our students, which we have on the line today, our students with the least amount of power in this situation, our families, if we don't empower their voices to be a part of the change, then how do we create racial equity? We don't even ask them what racial equity is. That's what we got babies on tonight to ask them, what does it mean to you? So us as educators, we can get it right. Because we assume we knew what it was. And unfortunately, based on the hundreds of years of data and education, we haven't figured out what it means to kids. If we just ask you, I think we can figure this out. Empowerment. And most critically, we're going to constantly be doing even tonight is adjusting and shifting our mental models. What is our belief systems? What is the narrative we have about this work, which is the hardest part of this work in education? And so I want to just give that context as our panelists begin to come forward and talk about the concepts of racism. And I want to leave us with a couple of things for our community to engage in before we get started. Again, we got to make sure we unpack what racism means, that it is a social construct that has been created to artificially divide people based on characteristics, based on physical appearance, things that actually don't really show differences. We actually have more in common with people than not. If you don't believe me, do Ancestry.com and check your DNA, right? I identify as an African-American woman, and I tell you, I'm 30% Western European. And what that means is race can't be true. Wait a minute, my white brothers and sisters, I got 30%. So it can't be that we actually have that kind of difference. But you got to remember, race has a history. And so you got to look at the history of racism, recognize it was a system created to sort and select people and to ensure that power stays with just a small group while everyone else actually fought. So I call it divide and conquer. So those that represent and recognize and identify as white, we're going to break down that. And I push people to recognize your European ancestry. Because there's rich history there that we have to recognize. There's harm there. They have to recognize the concept of white is a way to create power structures and actually we call it divide and conquer, right? We have more in common than not. It's really about who keeps all the wealth and power. And this is a hard one because this is where politics come into play, and we're not going to do politics tonight, but if you don't understand the idea of racism and understand the history, then we'll constantly be paralyzed by that word and not be able to address it. Okay, so what I want to do is give you a little quick context of, so what is racial equity? What does it look like? The National Equity Project has a great example. We've adapted one to really call out race, but it's about giving kids what they need to reach their full potential. Pretty simple, right? Pretty simple. We're going to hear our panelists talk about what does it mean to them. But it's about making sure our kids have equally high outcomes, that all kids have access to equally high outcomes, and that we are going to remove the predictability of success or failure in school for kids of color. We are no longer going to just be able to go to any district in California, and I'm not even going to go to the rest of the nation to go and look and say, wow, I can predict that the African-American students, maybe our Latinx students, our kids with special students with disabilities, kids who are poor, that we can actually predict that they're always going to be at the bottom of the achievement gap. I don't believe that they're all, just because of those boxes they mark, that they're all not brilliant. Somehow we got to interrupt that predictability, because that has been going on a long time based on racial factors, social factors, cultural factors. So we got to interrupt. We got to also talk about removing the biases that exist. And that's an ongoing process for us as not only educators, but also in the community. When we start talking about, so thankful we have Detective Andrews here, we start talking about issues around police in schools and how people are all in an uproar. I have to say, us as educators, we perpetuate some of the school to prison pipeline, because guess what? Through those biases, we actually discipline kids differently. And so we see a disproportionality of kids who are disciplined based on being kids of color, based on a lot of different social, cultural factors. And then we also end up criminalizing them based on the behavior structures we create in school. So these are things we got to interrupt and recognize that kids are all brilliant. We got to identify the unique talents and skills and really help them reach their full potential, and not put them in a box anymore based on racial factors. That's part of how we interrupt institutional racism, is recognizing what does racial equity look like. And so lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push us as a community right now to engage in a quick conversation so that we can talk about some of the issues around recognizing and responding to racism. We have a great movement right now in education. We have a great movement in our nation. There's a lot of solidarity around racial justice. It's powerful. But there's also the reality that there's a lot of pushback, there's a lot of resistance, and there's a lot of fear and rage. And so in recognizing what racism is, we also have to be ready to respond. And so the reality is that as our panelists get ready to speak to us, we have to remember that in our society, we have some things we got to wrestle with and come to grips with as a society. And so the response to racism requires us to be even more aware of some of the things that are really plaguing us. And so I'm going to share with you the perspective of a gentleman by the name of Dr. Eddie Gold. And he's out of Princeton. And I'm going to share this video to provoke a little bit of thought, maybe some emotions, maybe some questions for our community. And so I'm going to ask our community that's part of our webinar, if you want to share in the chat so that we can have a community dialogue about what's resonating with you about this particular perspective about racism in America. And again, I'm going to ask you to do that in the form of what we call our CAP moment. We're going to ask you to write what's confirmed for you. So what type of things come up for you? You're like, yes, I agree, I get it, it makes sense. What was confirmed for you as you listen to this gentleman speak? I'm also going to ask you to give us our A, your ask. What questions do you want to ask? You may have some non-closure. You're like, oh, I'm not sure what that meant. I don't get it. What question do you want to ask? And then last but not least, the P is provoke. What emotions are provoked in you as you listen to this video? Okay, and we always ask our equity leaders to have CAP moments, especially when we have conflict, we have something that just is uncomfortable. So this video may strike you as uncomfortable, but it also strikes you as someone's truth. And so we're going to hear it for a moment and ask that you provide your CAP moment in the chat box after the video ends, and we're going to jump right into our questions for our panelists. Grab a piece of paper to help you take some notes. We're going to hear a perspective about racism in America.
I mean,
Wait,
You
you
know,
can hear it?
America's not unique in its sins as a country. We're not unique in our evils, to be honest with you. I think where we may be singular is our a refusal to acknowledge them and the legends and myths we tell about our inherent, goodness to hide and cover and conceal so that we can maintain a kind of willful ignorance that protects our innocence. See, the thing is that when the Tea Party was happening, we were saying, pundits, oh, it's just about economic populism. It's not about race. When people knew, social scientists were already writing that what was driving the Tea Party were anxieties about demographic shifts, that the country was changing, that they were seeing these racially ambiguous babies on Cheerios commercials, that the country wasn't quite feeling like it was a white nation anymore. And people were screaming from the top of their lungs, yo, this is not just simply economic populism. This is the ugly underbelly of the country. See, the thing is this, and I'll say this and I'll take the hit on it. There are communities that have had to bear the brunt of America confronting, white Americans confronting the danger of their innocence. And it happens every generation. So somehow we have to kind of, oh my God, is this who we are? And just again, here's another generation of babies. Think about it, a 2-year-old had his bones broken by 2 parents trying to shield him from being killed. A woman who has been married to this man for as long as I've been on the planet almost, lost her husband. For what? And so what we know is that the country has been playing politics for a long time on this hatred. We know this. So it's easy for us to place it all on Donald Trump's shoulders. It's easy for us to place Pittsburgh on his shoulders. It's easy for me to place Charlottesville on his shoulders. It's easy for us to place El Paso on his shoulders. This is us. And if we're going to get past this, we can't blame it on him. He's a manifestation of the ugliness that's in us. I've had the privilege of growing up in a tradition that didn't believe in the myths and the legends because we had to bear the brunt of them. Either we're going to change, Nicole, or we're going to do this again and again, and babies are going to have to grow up without mothers and fathers, uncles and aunts, friends, while we're trying to convince white folk to finally leave behind a history that will maybe, or embrace a history that might set them free from being white. Finally.
What else?
Lord help us.
So as you participate in your CAP moment, I'm going to pause for a moment and ask us to just pause. You heard several different concepts that were shared around racism in America. This video is about a year old. So you heard some of the concepts from about a year ago, incidents that have happened. Just want you now, just take a moment to reflect on what you heard and participate in our CAP moment. And we're going to ask that you place that in the chat as we have a community dialogue about what we heard. Again, what was confirmed for you? What question do you want to ask? And what emotion was provoked as you watch the video around this particular perspective about racism in America? I'm just going to pause for a moment and allow our community to share. Again, what was confirmed? What question do you want to ask? What emotion was provoked? You can go ahead and place that in the chat. We'll give our community a few moments to engage in reflection. And then we're going to get ready to jump into our panel discussion. Thank you, community members, for sharing what was confirmed for you. Panelists, as you see some of the thoughts of our community member, we're going to start our dialogue as well. Thank you, Ben. Appreciate that. Our country is not unique in dealing with racism, but we are unique in our refusal to admit its existence. Powerful, powerful. Thank you. Community, keep sharing, keep sharing. Your thoughts, your CAP moment. What was confirmed? What question do you want to ask? What emotion was provoked? It's powerful dialogue. Strong, impactful. The damage, yeah, it's happening in the Black community. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer, for acknowledging Black Lives Matter and how to face this backlash, yeah, because it forces people to accept a problem. And then you called out ignorance, which is something we're going to talk about tonight. How do we reveal just things that people just don't know, which is part of a barrier to this work? Excellent. Thank you so much. Keep sending in your chats, because as we get ready to move into our questions, it's important that we have this as a dialogue. We know that this is Zoom and we'd love to be in person, but use this chat feature. We're also going to have Q&A that's going to be available for you as well. Panelists, as we get ready to transition, you may have had some thoughts and emotions provoked in you as you watch the video. And so I'm going to challenge you again today. We're going to take racism to a new level and go in a little deeper with each of our dialogues. This is our 5th one. So I want us to, again, have the safe space to speak our truth, experience a little discomfort, knowing that some truth may be different from others. But this is where we have an opportunity to really grow together. And again, staying engaged in this work is so critical as we continue to move forward. As you think about some of the things that I share with context to race, I want you as panelists to think about how you keep unpacking this. I mentioned calling out things like race, but calling out those actual words where we mark boxes, right? We mark box white and Asian, and I think there's only one in the census, there's only a few places we can mark a box, right? But at the end of the day, when we look at identity, I'm gonna start off asking you about how do we dismantle the constructs of race by just not identifying based on the way that we actually separate and sort and kind of discriminate against people, but how about we call out our ethnicity and our culture, right? Like where I'm from, what my belief systems are, because those are where I connect with people. When I use the word race, then that's now a division, a separation from others. And so I called out things like white, recognizing European ancestry, right? I'm calling out even being an African American. When I start unpacking that, I have African ancestry, I have American ancestry, right? So I want y'all to be thinking about, let's take this deeper today. And I'm gonna actually start off with our first question to help us maybe demystify and deconstruct this concept of race. And I'm gonna ask just maybe 2 of you, and this is open to anyone, but 2 of you from our panel, if you can just start off and tell us your identity, your cultural and ethnic identity in particular, and share how racism has impacted your experiences, not only in the school district, but also in the community itself. So I'm gonna open it up to 2 panelists just to share, and this is gonna be a continuous question that you may wanna share as you answer other questions, but share your cultural and ethnic identity and how racism has impacted you. Go ahead, Gamal, jump in, get us started with this great dialogue.
Okay, so my cultural and ethnic identity, I am Egyptian, 100% Egyptian from Egypt, came to the United States in age 28, don't add the numbers. And my journey in the United States started in Baltimore, Maryland in 1998. In Baltimore, I was shocked to know that people cannot tell what I am, you know, when it comes, I'm not white, I'm not black, which is right outside of Baltimore in Glen Burnie, it's either black or white. So I have been asked multiple times who I am and what I am, you know, where I'm from. And this continued until 2001, when I interviewed for a teacher position at Edison High School as a math teacher 1 week after September 11. And yes, I was asked about September 11 during the interview. And my life changed on September 11, a week before to a week after. Still until now, after all these years being Stocktonian, it will never go a week or 2 without being asked where you're from until now. It can be anybody in our community, appearance in the store, everywhere. The funny thing happened when I finished the questionnaire with the 2020 census. In question 9, I went to put my ethnicity or race, and I find out that I'm white. So, because Egyptian right there under white. So I'm so glad that I started the journey early enough to be sure of who I am, what I'm about, and address this inequity across the board.
Excellent. Thank you, Gamal, for sharing your truth. So much we learned just in that few minutes, and just thank you so much for sharing how interesting it is that why does it matter where you're from, right? Because I gotta make sense of how I treat you, right? And that's interesting. So I appreciate you sharing your story and your truth that we all can learn from. Also, thank you, Gamal, for modeling what we want all our panelists to do. We have about 2 minutes to respond each question, and I neglected to say that as a moderator, so I want to say that as well. And also, again, to our community members, as we ask these questions, you may have some questions you want to ask, so please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to enter those, and we will take time to answer those questions as well as best we can. So I want to ask anyone else to jump in and share, what is your cultural or ethnic identity, and how has it impacted how has racism impacted your experience?
I can share out about that.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. I'm an African-American woman, very proud African-American woman. I identify with the African-American culture. And I say that even though there's a lot of pride that goes along with that, it's still in so many ways a double-edged sword. And what I mean by that is that, we know the whole history of slavery. Because I didn't have the benefit of being from Africa, living in Africa, knowing what tribe I may come from, being here in America, it's kind of like, it's a missing link. I can say I feel like a spiritual connection. Like I feel like, my roots, I feel it. But being a African-American person, when I interact with other Africans, I have friends, people who are African that are friends, there's not a connection there in terms of they don't see that I'm, similar from this, this connection. The other piece is that being an African-American, as we know with the history of racism in America, even though my ancestors, worked and built America and toiled and slaved and labored, being in America as an African-American woman, still on a daily basis, the liberty and justice and rights that everyone should have are not afforded all the time to African-American people. I mean, that's just a given that we see play out all the time. Specifically as an African-American woman, I can say, again, I say with pride, it's something that I wear every single day. There's stress that is involved with that in terms of the way I'm viewed, the way I'm seen, the way I'm perceived, the way I speak, the way I wear my hair, the way I show up in meetings. There's a lot of judgment that goes along with that. And so as African-American people, I know I can think of my mom's voice saying, you always have to be 150 times, work harder, you do everything, 150 times harder you have to work just to be able to quote unquote prove yourself, which is a burden. It's something that I think so many, like I tell my kids, it's kind of like, sometimes you're judged just because of, again, the skin you're in. And so you have to work to be doubly harder and to be more professional and to, kind of accommodate things. And it's a burden, it's hard to kind of do that. So a double-edged sword, I will say that. A lot of pride, but at the same time, everything that I do as an African-American woman, if I, even though I am educated, I have degrees, I make a great salary, if I decide to go to the bank and I wear like jeans and a casual t-shirt, I may be questioned about, do I have money in the account? If I go to a store and I'm dressed casually, I may be followed in the store, even though that's not the person that I am, or that's not the, things that are, myself. So just sharing that. I know time, so I'll stop. Thank you.
Yeah, no, powerful. Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate your perspective and sharing your truth about your experiences as an African-American woman. Just appreciate that. And so what I want to do is I want to keep this conversation going. And again, I'm wanting to take this deeper and deeper because, again, sharing our ethnicity and our culture really helps to dismantle that concept of race. So I want to continue to keep that going. And I want to go into the second question. I want to start with actually one of our students. So Reina or Hazem, I want to ask you, how do you define racial equity? How do you define racial equity? And maybe give us an example of what that looks like from a student perspective. So Reina, you want to jump in first?
Of course. Racial equity for me is not only just focusing on certain students or certain aspects of what they need, but focusing on everybody, making sure that everybody gets what they need instead of just equally handing out like one paper. Maybe one student needs 2 papers, or one person needs more help than another student. So giving that out as leaders and as SUSD, like we should really just look out for how much they need instead of just, okay, this is what you get and that's it.
Wow, powerful. Thank you for that. Powerful. Great example too in the classroom. Everyone learns differently. Like some may need something different than others. So I appreciate that, Raina. Hazem, why don't you jump in and add to that? What does racial equity mean to you, and what does that look like as a student?
Yes, so racial equity to me is what Raina said, giving everybody what they need. But I feel like a common misconception about racial equity is people look at, oh, this race needs this, so let's give all those people of that race this, and not going into the people in that race saying, like what Raina, student of that race needs this, but the student of the same race of the other student needs this. And so I feel like seeing racial equity in the school would require deeply to every student, not just looking at their race saying, oh, this is a African-American student and so they all need this. No, it's looking at every student and seeing what they need, not and recognizing that yes, they need something to their race, but they still need something for them. And so racial equity to me, like I said before, is just deeply going into what you see in every student and giving them what they need. Because at the end of the day, racial equity is still equity and it's not equality. And saying that you have to go into every student and look at what they need and not just based on their race.
Absolutely. Well said, Azim. And I just appreciate you and Raina kind of bringing that out, because I think even some of the questions and comments that should be coming up and that have been asked even between the chat and also the questions we'll ask from the Q&A is this piece about like kids of color, like what does that actually mean, right? And so because one kid says, I identify as a Latinx, right? I identify that I'm from Puerto Rico. I identify I'm from Mexico. We start to unpack people's cultural identity, right? And their ethnicity versus they mark that box on the census or demographic data, which shows up from our California Department of Ed. It's the way we collect data. And then we make assumptions that they all need the same thing. And that's where we go wrong as well. We called out, like Brian called out, we're not monolithic. We don't all have the same needs, even if we mark the same racial box. So it's really important we recognize that. So I just appreciate you all, both of you calling that out. I'm gonna go to a couple of questions here in the Q&A for a moment. And I'm going to, again, just allow panelists to jump in to share your perspective. And I'm gonna go to each individual panelist as well. So I got a couple of questions here. I'm gonna read question. I keep hearing people talk about racism against Blacks and Latinos, but nobody bringing up about them being racist against other people, which is not okay either. I am Mexican American and I have biracial children, and my oldest child has experienced racism from Blacks and Latinos and nothing was done about it. I experience on a daily basis racism because I do not speak Spanish, and I've seen non-Spanish speaking kids made fun of. So there's that dualism now where we have people who just aren't good enough for one side, aren't good enough for another, and we still treating people just not like human beings. So I'm gonna call on Monica because Monica's raising her hand. Go ahead, Monica, and speak to that question here.
So thank you for that question. I love the vulnerability that comes and the authenticity that comes across in that question. And I so much appreciate it. When I read it, I immediately, it resonated with me because it spoke to a lot of my own experiences growing up. I'm not biracial. I'm not from Stockton. I'm originally from Los Angeles. And growing up, you know, I was always kind of a misfit because there was a disconnect. And this connects back to what Gamal was saying and what Sharon was saying. You know, Gamal talked about people constantly asking him, what are you? I still get that today. Sharon talked about the disconnect when she corresponds with her African friends and how they don't see the connection to her because she's African American. It was the same experience with me growing up because I didn't speak the language. And in, you know, okay, first let me start with how I culturally identify because that's going to make a lot of sense. I consider myself to be a Chicana. I do not identify myself as a Hispanic nor as a Latino because both of those terms represent, for lack of a better word or lack of a better phrase, they represent the oppressor and how, you know, Spain came and conquered my people and our land. And I don't believe in identifying myself with any kind of I just can't take that. I won't own that terminology. And quite frankly, Hispanic and Latino, and even Latinx by extension sometimes are just terms of convenience for people, right? It's just easier to discuss things if we have this generalized term that applies to multiple people. And so I don't accept that. I'm a Chicana, which means that my descendants come directly from Mexico. And the majority of people who look like me, that's true for them too, if they did some more unpacking, especially when you consider that this was Mexico before, right? And the reach of that country and that land. And so there's a lot of unpacking and a lot of history that I didn't know until I was, in the 9th grade, when I had a teacher basically help me unpack my identity. And I think, to answer that question about the exchanges that happen with our kids about these attacks, because it happened to me. I never fit. I wasn't ever Mexican enough because I didn't fit into the mold that you should be when you're Latino, right? I wasn't Catholic and I didn't speak Spanish. Therefore, what the heck are you? I knew I wasn't white. I knew I wasn't Black. I was just this brown girl wandering around aimlessly. And so, but that's because I didn't know my history, and I didn't have adults in the education system to help me unpack that. There weren't stories that represented my people and where they came from. There were no historical accounts of the richness of my legacy and my heritage.
Yeah, powerful.
And that's still true today, that on a daily basis, because that's not an embedded practice, because they're not seeing a reflection of themselves in their textbooks, in their content. They've turned on each other. And really the only way to repair that is to start educating them.
Yeah,
and so that question just really spoke to me, because I, as a mother, I can just imagine how heartbreaking that is, right? To see your babies being in a very vulnerable position and not quite fitting. And I don't have an answer to that. I don't know what the one magic bullet would be, but I really wanted to speak to that because I could identify with that so personally. And thank you for bringing that to the forefront.
Well said. Thank you, Monica, for sharing your truth and your story. Just really appreciate that. And obviously, I love what you said about, in so many words, don't assume what I am, right? I may not be Latinx. I'm actually Chicana. That's how I identify. And what you told was a story. And I think what also helps to break down this racial construct is that we don't know the stories. We don't recognize history. We just go with what is those common terms. And so I appreciate you breaking that down. And that's what this panel is for. Let's break it down. I appreciate that. Raina, looks like you want to jump in and share.
Yeah, so first I want to start off with racism has no race. Basically, I don't think that just white people are racist or just Mexican people are racist. This is like, everybody has a bias towards every other race. I know that when I was younger, that's what I had. Like, I knew that I would look at somebody and of course I'd have my first opinion. But as Monica said, I understand where it comes from because I see this on a daily with my peers. Like when I get asked, I identify as Pacific Islander or Chamorita, and basically a lot of people assume that I am a part of Latinx or Hispanic, and I am not. I am Hispanic, but I don't identify, since I grew up culturally in a Chamorro household, and those are the rules I was taught. So when people are asking me if I know Spanish or if I know this language, and then when I tell them that I don't, they get confused as if I'm not that, but I am. So racism is everywhere, and racism is within everybody. So.
Absolutely. Well said. I appreciate you calling that out. Why racism is so hard to grapple with is that we have this concept of colorism, right? Where we have a skin tone issue around people who mark the same box, come from the same ethnic background. But also appreciate you calling out just, where I'm from and where you're from, like those are different. And why is that a problem, right? So we've actually learned self-hate. We've learned that, and we actually perpetuate racism even within people who have been oppressed. So I appreciate both of you sharing that perspective. And I'm going to jump to another question. Jillian, I'm going to direct some of this question to you, and it's centered actually from one of our Q&A questions. So I'm going to tie in a couple of things. There's multiple questions here. And so I want to share, one of the questions is, can we provide actual facts or a spreadsheet about kids of color that are allegedly underrepresented, oppressed, based on institutional racism, favoritism of other races in all areas? So I think this question stems from, again, like, is there evidence of this? And that was one of our questions. What is the evidence that kids of color are actually underrepresented, oppressed, and institutional racism impacts them? And I think a lot of you already answered those questions based on your own experience, but I think this is a legit question that everyone doesn't understand. So maybe there's some data that really demonstrates these racial inequity gaps. So Jillian, can you start with that, kind of answering that question?
I can do my best.
And then I'm going to ask Sharon to jump in too right after.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's too much evidence that points to that. Some of the main evidence that we can look at, and we have test scores that show it, and we have, what I really look at for data is the student experience on our campuses. So that tells a story of how if they're coming to school, how they're experiencing school when they're there, the relationships that they have with their peers, with the adults. And we take surveys on that on a regular basis to be able to determine how our students are feeling on our campuses. And right now we're finishing that up, and we're going to understand different perspectives of where students are at our during distance learning right now, and how they're being impacted and how they're feeling during this time and connecting to school. And we can break that down by race, by gender, by grade level, by homelessness. We could break it down by all these different factors to understand how students are experiencing school. And it's sad when you look at it, it makes me cry sometimes when you think about where these kids are coming from, and they're telling us loud and clear, their voices are there, that there are issues. I'm experiencing this more than my peers. My color of my skin has been impacted, and the kids are telling us this on a regular basis. And so what the benefit of knowing the information is that now we can do something about it. And that's where I think for a long time is that we've struggled, because we've known it for a long time. This isn't new. This has been around for a long time. The data has shown it for a very long time. Yeah. We finally are getting to a place where we have a common understanding in education that we can address it. And I'm very fortunate that I get to work with youth and help them create actions to be able to help address it with other peers and their experiences on campus. I have a friend and a coworker who says, if you're trying to do work for students, you need to have the youth be a part of it, because you can't do it for them, they have to do it with us. Right. And that's a really important piece, and their voices are telling us things. We just need to give them the power to be able to help address some of the issues.
Yeah, well said, I appreciate that. Sharon, do you want to add in to a response to this question about the evidence about this oppression and kids being of color being impacted by institutional racism?
Absolutely. Definitely, absolutely. When we look at our data, the sad reality is that if we look at our data in Stockton Unified, if we go to any school district in California, nationwide, our data shows us that our African-American, Latinx, Native American students are disproportionately expelled and suspended at a higher rate than our other student groups. That's just like a given. I've worked in several districts, and it's kind of like, that's so sad because that narrative has not changed. Specifically, one thing that I think is really great, what we do at Stockton Unified, is that we do examine our data. When we look at our data, we've seen a lot of disproportionality with our suspensions and expulsions. And then not only do we just look at that, but we really work to address it. At one point, I came on board in 2017, and we definitely sent out data to our administrators as far as suspensions, just our rates, and we kind of look at that. But we really realized we need to really disaggregate it a little bit further and look at which specific student groups are being suspended and expelled more than other students. So when we send out data to our administrators, to our teams, we send out data disaggregated by our student groups. And the purpose for that is so we can see our trends. Do we see that why, if we only have 8% of African-American students in our district, are half of the expulsions we've had in any given year are African-American students? Those are things we have to, as a system, look at, address, and really come to terms with that and be held accountable for. Like when we talk about not only our discipline data, we can look at our data, we can see the number of students of color that are in our AP and honors classes. If we go and walk in classrooms, we can look and take a look at that. So I think the key thing when we talk about institutionalized racism is that first of all, we have to acknowledge that it exists. And that's really sometimes a hard thing to do. Sometimes, you know, people don't feel it's a problem that half of our African-American and Latino students are suspended more than other students. Then that's like a mindset issue. We have to work on that. We have to say, that's our internal work where, you know, why is that okay? That shouldn't be okay for people. So we have to first have the courage to call out inequities, and then we have to be able to address them. And then addressing them are working collectively together, not just from one department, one particular group of people that will say, this is not good information, but we have to collectively as a district say, this is not acceptable. We're here to serve our students and our families. What policies, practices that are in place that are not serving our students well, that are creating barriers, are we going to as a district address? And then how do we hold ourselves accountable for doing that? That's the key thing about it. We talk about our families. Our families sometimes, because of their experiences in schools, have not had the ability to advocate for their students because they've had negative experiences also. But we need to make sure that we're, you know, supporting our students and our families, and that they're able to say, hey, we're serving your students. If we're not doing that, we need to be, again, held accountable to do that.
Right. No, well said. I really appreciate that and in addressing that question, because that question is one that is important, is leading by data, right? Like we're not here because people are making these stories up. We're not here because the data is not clear. And so Sharon, you gave some great examples, Jillian, great examples of ways you're collecting data too, which I really appreciate about the experiences versus just what the hard data says about suspension, right? Honors and AP courses. There's another question that I want to let some folks jump in on, but this question around like, what were policies created for? Were they only created? So are we saying our policies only created for white students, or were they created to include all? And I think this is a very critical question because when we do the history of public education, it's very important. If you have not done that, that is something I recommend everyone study, is the history of public education. And you will find that policies were not created for students of color, for girls, for people who were poor even, right? Education was not centered around that originally, and that was all the way back in the 1600s. As we fast forward and those policies have advanced, we still have seen where those policies have not landed in what those intents were, but also based on what the intent was at that time, is that it was not designed to be racially equitable. That is not the history of public education. And so the example around policy to this day, we have a policy landmark decision in 1954 that followed Mendez versus Westminster, but also Brown versus Board of Education, which actually was a policy to desegregate schools. And what's so interesting is here we are 2020, and we still are more segregated than ever. We see one side of town that looks different from the other side. That is rooted in policy, but it hasn't landed well in terms of implementation. And that's where the gap comes and why we see the data we see. So it's important that awareness be the first step to understanding policies. But what I do want to say is, and I think Sharon really, started to be going to this place of addressing that, we are looking at policy changes. We're looking at these, but we got to have the data first to know where we need to address it. So I want to just open it up for Bruce, if you can jump in, because I know you have a lot of historical context around this work. And I think that question about, were the policies created for white students, or were they created to include all races? I think it'd be important to hear your perspective on this.
Well, thank you, Nicole, for the question. And I want to ask the audience, can we have an honest conversation? And can we have a courageous conversation, especially about institutional racism? Okay, so if we look at, and I want to basically separate the two things, institution and racism. And looking at institutions, so what is an institution? The police department, the justice department, the health department, the education system. Stockton Unified are examples of institutions, okay? And so many of these institutions were in place before the end of slavery, okay? And so policy is created for an institution that did not include free African-American people, all right? And it was also based upon the fact that, and if we look at racism, racism is the belief that one race is superior to another. And I grew up in Texas in the 50s and 60s during Jim Crow. And Jim Crow is the belief that races should be separated and equal, but they were separated, but not necessarily equal. I can testify to the fact they weren't equal. Okay, we had a school system for blacks, and everything we got was a hand-me-down from the whites, and we just didn't have all the equipment and stuff for science and stuff like that to learn. And so they were not equal. But policy, basically, okay, let me just continue to tell you like this, okay? So while many people do not experience racism is experienced by individuals and groups as hurtful, harmful, painful, and or lead to death. Individuals and groups have been victimized by acts of racism. And so many of these individuals have been victimized over and over again, thus leaving them traumatized. So even the policy in place, zero tolerance, has really done damage to African-American students more so than anybody, okay? And 3 strikes and you're out, okay? A policy, right? Has victimized African-Americans more. So if we can see the effects of police brutality on TV more and more. And when an individual is harmed or hurt or murdered by the police, we see it over and over again, and thus we feel victimized ourselves, even though we're not the one being hurt or harmed at that time, okay? And that's clear. And also the justice system, we can look at the justice system. The policy for justice system and the justice system basically tends to basically give out more harsh sentences to blacks than whites, okay? Now, as education, after education, it's a little more subtle, okay? But blacks are constantly victimized by not being taught their history, okay? So if you're not taught your history, then you don't have a way of having an identity. And thus, you have to depend on the institution to tell you who you are. And of course, if you don't accept that, then of course you become more defiant and disruptive and so forth. So, so if we look at how the system is set up, racism, institutional racism means that racism is ingrained and it is embedded in the institution. So while they may bring in different people of color, the culture of the institution never changes. Yeah. And they bring in teachers of different colors, and they never change. Okay. Yeah. So the harm is still being done as we speak on a daily basis, even without noticing it so much.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, Bruce. Wow, powerful, and what a great perspective and your truth of your own experience. I think sometimes just hearing that it's real because I experienced it. It's not made up, but it's real. But I really appreciate you breaking that down in the institution, because I think that's where policies lie, right? Constantly perpetuating these disadvantages. And so I heard you call out a specific ethnic group, which is interesting. You called out African American, and I want to make sure I really respond to this piece, that we respond to this piece about calling out specific race, right? First of all, we're trying to deconstruct the concept of race, because race is what divides us, right? And creates that identity for people so we can treat people differently. But I want to make sure we understand that we don't want to play oppression Olympics, okay? And that term comes from, several folks. I know Dr. Jeffrey Duncan Andrade, who's a great mentor and great researcher in this field out of San Francisco State, and also opened his own school, Roses in Concrete. But people like him, and also Dr. Randall Lindsay, those kind of people really been an impact on my life. Great researchers help us remember that we don't want to play oppression Olympics where one race is more oppressed than others. So let's not get this wrong, right? We don't want to play that game because everybody's been harmed by racism, including people who identify as white. So I want to make sure we're clear on that. But I also want to be clear that when we are calling out specific race, this is about deconstructing the institution, is that we have to give it due diligence. If this is the conversation, Bruce called out African American, this is also a space that people are uncomfortable talking about history of African Americans in this country. So when those conversations come up, often we have a hard time addressing that, and then we start to back out and we want to talk about everyone. And again, I don't want to disrespect we don't play oppression Olympics of who was in first and second place about being oppressed, but we do want to give due diligence. Okay, when Monica was talking about I'm Chicana, That's what we heard, and that's where we're at. And we're not comparing her to anybody else. We're talking about her experience and what oppression played on her ancestors. So that's really important that we recognize that. That's part of deconstructing, and we want to make sure we call that out. I want to go to Detective Angie Andrews, because I know the word institution came up. So often people forget about, like, hey, there's multiple institutions that impact education, and just really excited to have you on tonight, as we have every night, because we know that a lot of this was kind of stirred up around the time when George Floyd was murdered. And that really created a lot of uproar about defund the police, and just really a lot of scrutiny around this work. And I know you are very familiar with School to Prison Pipeline, and that's something that Stockton has really been addressing. So we really appreciate that, but also know that we still got a long ways to go. And I want to just give an opportunity to help us understand, with all of this that we're calling out in terms of racism, institutional racism, how has the Stockton Unified School District Police Department really redefined its work in terms of focusing on addressing institutional racism?
Well, thank you for that. So what we really have done throughout the years, I've been with the department over 4 years, and in the last 4 years, there's been drastic changes every single year. And I would have to say this year was probably the biggest change of all, because now we're really focusing on what these kids need from us and what the community, I specifically say kids because I like kids more. No offense to adults, I like kids more. But these kids need the best foundation to help them succeed in life. They have their parents, and they have the school, and then they have us as the police department. Mm-hmm. And what we've really tried to actually reconstruct was what we call the 4 cornerstones. Mm-hmm. And we literally focus on multiple different things in these quadrants and really give the best hope for these kids. So the first one is, it's the restorative justice program. So pretty much it's not the prison to pipeline. It's giving these kids a chance to be like, hey, you're a kid, you messed up. Let's figure another way to do this. Let's redirect you. That's the main portion of it. The second one is youth engagement, such as the GREAT program, the Explorer program, the Public Safety Academy, the Police Athletic League, and then the PLUS program. So we're really trying to focus on all these different types of kids that are in these specific groups and engaging with the police. Because what a lot of kids don't understand, what people don't understand, is that I'm human. I'm a mom of a crazy kid who's 4 years old that drives me crazy. I'm a police officer, but I'm also human. And I want to help these kids, because you know what, one day my kid is going to be a troublemaker, and I already know it. He needs all the help he can get. So I need that too. And then, sorry, it's my dog. The third one is the community involvement, which will be meetings with area community members, youth advisory board, the community advisory group, police and community together. And then the fourth one is the holistic approach, where we give family referrals, youth resources, and mental health. So we're focusing on these 4 things that are really trying to reach every single person in the community, all the kids, that if this is something you need, we have it for you. If not, we will invent it then. Not a problem.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful. Thank you for that, because I think many don't recognize how you've redefined the role of police in schools. And we just want to appreciate that, because we know it takes a village, right? And we recognize that there is a need for addressing student behavior in schools, but we also want to be careful not to criminalize. And so I really appreciate all that you brought up, is really to avoid that, so that we can really interrupt that institution that creates that school to prison pipeline. I want to keep this going around institutional racism, because one of the things I know, Detective Andrew, when we look at like data that you all have unpacked as well, that obviously the concept of African American students obviously shows up in the data, right, of being in the system quite a bit for multiple reasons, that you are unpacking as an institution in itself. And I know that, again, I mentioned George Floyd and kind of how we got to this place, right? The racial dust was kicked up because there was a lot of just energy around that. And one part of that energy was Black Lives Matter and that movement. So I want to take a moment and ask Carrie to kind of jump in and share your perspective about, obviously, Stockton USD is really working on its statement around Black Lives Matter and really trying to make sense of it. And I just want to ask you, Carrie, what does Black Lives Matter mean to you? Because it has definitely become a controversial term, but we want to just unpack, like, what does that actually mean to you? I want to ask you to start us off with that conversation.
Right. So for me, like, Black Lives Matter has, the history of it with, coming out of, basically a hashtag with the whole Trayvon Martin murder and the acquittal of George Zimmerman back then. And we first became aware of that term, but what's happened with George Floyd has just really been an impetus to kicking that into high gear. For me, Black Lives Matter is really about bringing awareness to the fact that African Americans are disproportionately harmed by police brutality in America and disproportionately affected and impacted by institutionalized racism. And the benefit of it, and I alluded to in the beginning, I'm really excited about where we're at. Because to me, out of tragedy, out of marginalization, out of hate can come growth and love and understanding and empathy. And that's where all of this, when we grow, we have growing pains, and I feel like we're in those pains right now. So as much as they hurt, it's where we need to be, because this has been the impetus for dialogue happening. This dialogue is happening, which is what we need for change. It's what's creating awareness, where awareness has not been there before. And you have people that have always wanted to do well and want the best, but don't know how or just aren't aware, that are now taking up this call. And so I just feel like this has been a great, just it's the battery to just create social change in the fabric of our society. And so I really am, I'm really hopeful that out of all of this, we're going to come to some greater understanding. Of course, in that change, ugliness is going to rear its head. We're seeing all different things in society, and it's really difficult. I wanted to kind of, I actually wanted to answer the ethnicity culture question, because as seen visually as a white person, for me, white people's inability and struggle to answer that question, to me, illuminates institutionalized racism in itself, right? So for me growing up, and we'd have cultural whatever, and you historically will hear people say, well, I don't really have a culture, because our entire social fabric and structure centers on white identity and cultural norms. And so that's why we don't see it, right? I don't see it around me, because it's just what is every day, right? So I actually personally have been for years identifying myself as Western European American. I don't know if that's right, but I don't know if a lot of stuff is right, but I wake up every day trying to just do what's right, learn what's right, unpack my bias, and be involved in all ways that I can. And the Black Lives Matter movement is a huge thing for that. I think the All Lives Matter kickback on that has been really illuminating on allowing us to have discussions that are really shifting some mindsets about just an understanding that it doesn't mean that all lives don't matter. It's that these particular lives are disproportionately being oppressed right now, and we need to, in an equity fashion, equity context, do and reach down and pull up our brothers and sisters that need that help to get that equity there. So I think it's a really important movement right now that is the impetus for what I think is going to be some major cultural change. And it's not going to be the end. It's going to be continuing, right? But yeah, it's been really interesting.
Powerful. No, thank you so much, Carrie, for sharing that. Powerful, and just appreciate it. I'm going to ask Elisha to jump in and kind of add your thoughts around kind of what does Black Lives Matter mean to you? And I'm going to ask you a follow-up question on that in terms of what can we do to heal and be heard when it comes to this racial conflict that is happening.
So thank you for that. When I think about Black Lives Matter and what it means to me, it's really about elevating the racism and the oppression that Blacks have experienced in America. And it's about saying we want to stand up and say, even though there has been a history in America that has devalued the lives of Black people or the contributions of Black people, the history of Black people, that we want to say, no, Black lives matter, their histories matter, their stories matter, their presence matter. And it's not about mattering more. And there's sometimes, get that pushback that it's trying to elevate one race over the other, but it's saying we want to experience all the things that America has said is supposed to be for all Americans, right? Equality and justice for all Americans that has not been afforded to Black Americans equitably. And so it is about saying we believe in the ideals, and we want to experience and have that lived experience.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. And as you think about the conflict that comes, so racial conflict happens, right? It's happening very clearly on TV. We get to see it, you know, kind of on a day-to-day, depending on where you're located. And just like specifically when you think about how can we heal? Because this is hard. This is hard. How do we heal and also be heard? What is it going to take?
I think there's a couple of layers to that. I think we've touched on some of it in terms of knowing our own histories and knowing the history of America, even the history of schooling. If you look back, you can look this up. I think it was around 1785 when Thomas Jefferson said the purpose of schooling was to separate the genius from the rubbish. So schooling wasn't even designed to educate all students who came through the system. And so I think it's important that we, one, learn our, history. We have an understanding of how we have gotten into this place of having institutions and systems that are racialized. So I think, one, it's unlearning some of the stereotypes and the histories that we have been taught that may not have been accurate. I think we also have to really look at examining our own bias and thinking about and reflecting on how we may have internalized things about our own race and culture and that of others. One of the things that I share with people when I'm doing trainings is this concept of having windows and mirrors in your life. And this is talking about in terms of who we surround ourselves with. When we have, mirrors represent the people in our life that are very familiar to us. They look like us. They have cultural experiences like us. They reflect us. In some ways, they validate us. And that's great. But we also have to have people in our lives that represent windows that we are through our relationship with them, we have the opportunity to kind of like look into their story and their experiences and situations that they have encountered that maybe we haven't, but it gives us a deeper understanding of what our, brothers and sisters are experiencing who don't experience life like us. And just like it would be weird to live in a house with only mirrors and no windows, I think it is unhealthy for us to have in our life only have people that reflect our own beliefs, our own experiences. We have to also have windows. And I think when we set ourselves up like that we are intentionally going out and making connections with people who don't live like us, when we are intentionally listening to hear and to understand, even if we don't necessarily agree, but there is just something that's healing when you feel like you've been heard. And when you know that people are listening, not to respond, not to rebut, not to refute, but really to understand. And I think that is a huge place at the beginning. And then we start looking at, you've touched on so much of this, Nicole, like knowing our own racial identity. And even for white people to know what their racial identity is, to be more aware of how we may participate in systems or experience of racism, microaggressions being our own bias, and calling it out when we see it happening in other people. And we talk a lot about being an ally, which defined as allies supporting people who are experiencing racial injustice. I would challenge us to not just be allies, but to be anti-racist warriors. So we're not just supporting people who are experiencing racism, but we are actively engaging in dismantling racism so that we all can experience equity. And so I think it is, like I said, there's multiple layers. It starts internally, right? We have to do our own inner work, and then we can begin to actually take what we have learned internally and then begin to challenge some of the practices, some of the policies, some of the systems where we see racism happening. But it's internal work, it's relational work, it is listening, it is hearing, it is unlearning, and it is being uncomfortable. And I will just close with this, and because I think there is, it's okay, like you said, to be uncomfortable. And I think we should acknowledge the discomfort. And then I think when we are hearing truths, right, it's uncomfortable. But I think then we have to reflect on, if the truth is uncomfortable, why were we so comfortable with the lies that we have been told?
Yeah, well said. Wow.
Challenge that, and isn't it worth being in a state of discomfort to really heal and to learn the truth and to be able to have a space that is really equitable for all people.
Well said. Wow, well said. Really appreciate that, Alicia. And you brought up so many great points. I can't even add to it. But you mentioned something about like looking inward, right? And like, what can we do? We can start with ourselves. And so you mentioned implicit bias, right? And some of our blind spots that we have when we don't have that window and that door thing going at the same time. And I want to allude to this last question that I want to kind of direct to our students and to kind of end us with this. Is there's a question in here, and it's not specific to behaviors, but I think it's very relevant to this concept of implicit bias, which is taught at a very early age. And so the question is, why aren't a lot of parents being called out for their involvement when it comes to their child's constant cause of causing trouble or always being disruptive in classrooms? So not sure contextually exactly what that means, but I will say that racially motivated behavior shows up in our classrooms, y'all. It shows up. Implicit bias shows up even in our children when they treat each other differently. We've heard those experiences, some of you shared how you've been treated. And so with that, this calling out of most kids are this way because they've been doing that at an early age. And so I want to call out implicit bias right now, and really the role that implicit bias and that concept of stereotypes, how it plays out in the experiences of our students. And so I'm going to ask Raina and Hazem to kind of wrap this piece up for us. Tell us a little bit about the role of stereotypes and even implicit bias that you see play out in your experiences as students.
So I'll go ahead and take this one first, Raina.
Okay.
So I have been multiple times, because, you know, we're supposed to relate this to ourselves. Multiple times have I been subject to stereotypes, you know, since a very early age, being expected to be disrespectful and not learn in class and just be like not ready and not on the same level as other students just because of how they look at me. And so the question saying, why are parents not, like, why are students being bad? And if they're being bad, they probably started from a very early age. But when we look at it, we have to look at what's going on in the classroom and see that not all the time is it the student's fault, because at the end of the day, if a student doesn't have interest in the lesson, it's controversial, but it's the teacher's job to make them have interest in the lesson. And so a lot of people know that like disrespect, not necessarily disrespect, but inactive like learning and not being in tune with the classroom, it stems from not having interest in the lesson. And so I want to say it's the teacher's responsibility to like look past the stereotypes and not have implicit bias, which is very hard, but do not have implicit bias and look at the student and give them the equity that they need, and like try not to look at them and see and criminalize them. Do not criminalize the student because stereotypes leads to very bigger things. It can lead to stereotypes in school can lead to not having a job. It can lead to a lot of big things. And so you have to, as a teacher, and I don't want to just say teacher, as a school staff member, if that makes sense, you have to look at the student and not stereotype them, not have implicit bias, and just educate them and look past what you have on your mind, educate the student, and don't criminalize them.
Yeah, well said. Wow, powerful. Powerful. Raina, go on, jump in. Share a little bit of your insight on this.
To add on to Hazem's first sentence with stereotypes is usually people stereotype me to be loud, to be obnoxious, to interrupt, and once they notice that I'm not like that, the main thing that I'm asked is, why am I whitewashed? Why do I act like I am white? When it's really not that. You know, people are taught differently. People have learned differently. People grow up differently. I know that my values are not the same as Hazem's, and mine aren't as the same as anybody in here. And the one thing that you can learn from it is that we're human. We all have sympathy. We all feel emotions, and it's not our fault, you know? Like, obviously people are going to stereotype all the time. It's a 100% natural thing to do. we all look at somebody and say, this is how they're going to act. And if they treat you differently, you can't point them out to say whitewash or you are acting this race. You can't act a race. There's no definition to a race. And to add on to the question about why aren't parents being called out for I'm sorry, I'm blinking.
Yeah, they called out for their involvement in their kids' behavior, right?
Yeah, for that question, usually it's not a parent's fault. Growing up in a classroom, I know that I always struggled academically. It was really hard for me to learn just on paper and to be taught one thing, it goes in one ear, out the other. And I know my mom was very involved with me. I love my mother. And when I was younger, we would sit at the dinner table for hours trying to figure out my homework. And it wasn't her fault, and neither was it mine. But I think it's the staff's, their intention has to be patient. They have to learn, this is how a student learns. We don't all learn through our eyes. We have to feel, we have to see, we have to create. And that's how teachers should react towards us. They shouldn't just, hey, you know what, you're going to learn off of a paper, and that's it. And that goes back to the racial equity, where we all learn different, no matter what our race, no matter what our gender. We all have this different type of learning situation, which we need. So I personally don't think it's anybody's fault. I think that we all have to work together to put together a learning, like a development for all of us.
Yeah, well said. Wow. Powerful, Hazem and Raina. I just appreciate you kind of wrapping us up in our dialogue. And I just always hate this moment where we just never have enough time. But I want to say, Gamal, you started us off with sharing your story and kind of helping us to see we got to dismantle this, y'all. Like, we can't judge people without knowing them. We have to make sure we deconstruct the concept of racism and not judge our students based on what we think they should be. Because, that question was so profound, because the reality is that the way our students behave, they model what we do as adults. And it's imperative that us adults take ownership, right, for what also we have been taught. So that, again, Alicia said it, right? We need to look inside. What have we been taught? What do we need to unlearn so that we can better model for our babies, right, at young ages, how to dismantle that concept of blindness, which we call implicit bias, which we all have. But how do we unlearn and start to learn people's stories? Let's start calling out ethnicity and culture, which we have more in common than we do around the concept of race, which was actually designed to divide us. So with that, I just appreciate the panel, and you may have an opportunity to respond in our next and last part of our session from our public, right? Our public has been together with us this session. We appreciate each of them. The questions are amazing. And we want to just take a moment to let our community speak for a moment. So we're going to do what we call public comment. So if you would like to share your thoughts, we're going to give each of you about 2 minutes. And I'll give you a reminder when you get to about that 10-second mark, 20-second mark, but we want to let you speak your truth. And so if you would like to speak during public comment, please use the raise hand feature. And then I will call your name, and then we will have you unmuted so that you can join us and share your comments. So at this time, I want to ask any community members if they'd like to share any comments. Go ahead and use the raise hand feature. And if we have no comments, then the panel, we get to add some more thoughts, because I know y'all got more to share. We'll just give our community just a moment. Anyone who is participating, would you like to share any public comments? If so, please use the raise hand feature. We'll look for you so we can unmute your mic. I see some amazing comments in the chat, by the way. Thank you so much, Armina. Appreciate you. Vina, thank you so much. All right, so it looks like Gracie Madrid. Gracie, why don't you go ahead and jump in. We'll unmute you if you can make sure you're unmuted on your end, and please share. You have about 2 minutes to share your thoughts. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Gracie, as well.
Okay. You hear
there
me
you
now?
are. Yes, ma'am.
I just feel that for students to succeed, and I'm a Latina, for students to succeed, they need to have role models. And SUSD, for one, does not practice that. The Hispanic community is 80% of their students. Latino students are 80% of the population in SUSD. And if you look at the people that are hired, you have no administrators at the top. You have very few principals that are Latino, and other than cafeteria workers and janitors, that's about what you have. And so if you go back and you do a diagram of the student population versus the staff that you have, that'll tell you a lot about institutional racism. And instead of running around and talking about this and that, we need to really look at the facts. And somebody said they look at the data. Well, that's a data that needs to be looked at and practiced. And why the hiring for Latinos is so low, I don't know, but it's not right. And our students have no one to look up to. Policies that people write might not serve their purposes, but there's nobody there to speak for them. And so that's, I think, a big problem in the Latino community, especially with the population being 80%. That's it.
Oh, thank you, Gracie. We really appreciate that. And a reminder of some data we have to continue to unpack is our staffing, our diversity in terms of hiring practices, which is something we examine in education. So really appreciate that, Gracie. Great example. Our next public comment, I believe I saw a hand up and then the hand went down. So go ahead and put your hand up again if you would like to speak. Benjamin, there you are. I think you want to speak, Benjamin. I saw your hand up, down, not sure, but I'm going to ask Benjamin if you want to go ahead. Let's pull Benjamin in and at least double check to see, Benjamin, if you can unmute yourself, we can hear your comment.
Am I on?
There you are, yes.
Oh, thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity. I was listening very intently to the comments that were made by the panelists, and I have had all kinds of racism here in Stockton. In fact, I was going to write a book and call a chapter Stockton, South Carolina, to show the similarities to where we are here. But I have never allowed anyone to make decisions for me. And when I see someone, I see another human being. I don't see black, white, green, or whatever it is. If that person has good common sense, speaks properly, treats me fairly, we can work together. And so I can say that my time at Edison High School, I didn't have a bad day. A bad day is how you choose to look at what happens. And I always took the positive approach to problem solving. And it worked for me for over 37 years at the school. So as I look back, I don't have any regrets or anything. I see the students in the hall. If I have something to say, I talk to them personally. And I have faculty that have asked me as a counselor, please take this student out of my classroom. It's an African-American student. I said, what happened? He looked at me mean. So I said it's a construct. It's a psychological construct that a person has when they see color and not people. So with that, I want to appreciate the panelists for their comments, and I continue to enjoy working with the community, and I shall continue to do that. And congratulations to all of you who are here, the students, the faculty, the administrators. You keep working at it. That person you see on the street may not speak to you, but that's their problem. So you continue to do what you want to do, treat people fairly and squarely, and certainly things will work out much better. So congratulations to you. Thanks for the panel. I will look forward to the next presentation. And the rest of you, please choose. Listen to the word, please. Please choose to have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Wow. We call that drop the mic moment, Mr. Reddish. We appreciate that. And if you didn't hear anything he said, you know, that's the answer. How do we heal? How do we do this right? Treat people the way we want to be treated. And most importantly, have a positive approach to this work. Wow. Profound. Thank you, Mr. Reddish. We appreciate that. Appreciate Gracie's comments as well. Jennifer, we're going to have you come on in. Jennifer, please unmute yourself and share.
Hi, it's really hard to go after that. But I was just wondering, we talk about representation, and I agree that's a really big part. You have to see someone who looks like you in positions that aren't janitors and aren't lunch workers, because though those are really important roles and they help our system move, we also want to show them that that's not all that they can do. And so I totally agree with that, and I really like that that was brought up. But my question is, what's after that? That's something that's been coming up a lot, but after we have the representation, we still have all of this material and curriculum that's so Eurocentric, and it doesn't really acknowledge the beautiful thing that is difference and diversity. So once we have representation in the classroom, in administration, at the district level, at all levels, and we have this nice rainbow of color, what are we doing about curriculum, and how and when does that start?
Yeah. Whew, powerful, Jennifer. Way to call it out. That's it. You're calling out system change. We sure appreciate that comment. You know, beyond just diversifying workforce, right? Beyond just making some policy practice changes. How are we going to implement this from day to day? What does teaching and learning look like? So that's really a powerful kind of next step we have to figure out, huh? Thank you so much. Any other public comments from our community? Just appreciate you adding to the dialogue. Any other public comments, please use the raise hand feature to do so. I know several of you are sharing in the chat, so we should really appreciate it. Mr. Reddish, you got lots of love. Gracie, lots of love from the community. Just really appreciate your comments. Anybody else from our public comment? Just one last call before we get to our closing comments here for our community dialogue. All right, looks like we got everyone. All right. Whew, everyone take a deep breath. I just appreciate you all. We have a few moments before we have Dr. Spessard close us out, but I want to see if there's anyone who has any closing comments to contribute to our conversation today from our panel. Go ahead, Gamal.
Okay, I just want to share with the public, because there is a lot of work been done already beside try to communicate and listen to people. We are taking action. We are so proud of the adoption of ethnic study, and I'm so proud as a principal of a comprehensive high school to say that this year all freshmen at Franklin High School are enrolled in ethnic study class to learn about themselves, about their culture, about what they need to do. Today, actually, we met as an admin team and take recommendation from our leadership team with the focus area. And we have 4 different focus area. And in the heart of these 4 areas is equity. Franklin decided to have equity as the heart of our work. Okay, this is beside the trauma-informed instruction. It's besides the professional development for our staff and about students learning. We're gonna focus on students learning, but I just wanna share, I'm not the only principal who have this. I know a lot of my colleagues under the leadership of Stockton Unified and the support from our directors, and no, I'm not just saying this because they're here, and action been taken. And I am so proud to say that we are moving forward. We are not gonna allow any students on our campuses to be put down. It is on. We are there to support all our kids and provide all the support they need when they need it, at where they are at, and we meet them right there.
Powerful, powerful. Thank you, Gamal, for sharing that. Really appreciate it. Bruce, well, go ahead and jump in and share any closing comments.
Well, I want you to know that I've been around for a long time. I saw the effects of racism early on in my life. I've navigated it, gotten through a lot of that situation, but I'm really inspired by the young people that are stepping up into leadership. And as a BSU leader, advisor rather, I saw many of my students really blossom into leadership. And because the capability is there, it's just the guidance and direction. So I'm inspired by the fact that we have so much good people administrators at Stockton Unified that's leading these students to become leaders. And I don't have any concern about Stockton. Next 10, 20 years, it's going to really, really be awesome. It's going to be on the map for sure.
Oh, powerful. Yes, to our young people. If you haven't given them a hand clap, please do. Our young people, our young leaders. Hazem, Raina, just thank you so much for being leaders, sharing your voices and encouraging your peers to make sure they step up. And Jillian, just pulling the kids together, empowering them is powerful. Raina, go ahead, girl. Jump on in. Close us out. And then we'll hear from Mr. Reddish, I believe, with some last closing comments.
All right, I just want to say thank you to everyone who participated, all of the everybody listening in, and all of the panelists, and Hazima as well for being up here on here. Made me a lot less stressed than I was when I started, and I just want to thank you guys for giving me the voice to speak about these problems in our community. And I just want to say that us, our generation, we are the future, we are the change. So let's make that happen.
Well said. Hazem, jump on in.
Yeah, I just want to thank all you guys for giving me this opportunity to be here and talk about my experiences and help try and educate everybody that came to this panel event. I want to add on to what Raina said. Having a familiar face like another student on the panel really helped me not be as stressed as I was or as nervous. And yeah. Thank you guys. Thank all of you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate each of you. And Shirley, Hazem, Sharon, go ahead, jump in. I'm sorry.
Just want to add a comment too. And I want to value add to what Mr. Gamal said. There is so much work to be done. We know that. We acknowledge that in Stockton Unified. But I can say that I'm really proud of the work that we have begun. We are, sometimes we talked a lot tonight about some of our disproportionality with our suspensions and expulsions in our students. Sometimes it takes something that we're not really happy about to call things out. So we have talked about before, we have a Department of Justice settlement. And out of that work since 2013, there's been a committee of Stockton Unified educators, administrators, really just looking to see what are the practices regarding our discipline that we really need to change and address. So we've done some major work with that. We've had some things go to our board, school board. We've changed some policies to really see how we're working with our students. We talk about implicit bias, so major, and some things we're working on, you know this very well, Nicole, we're working with our staff, our administrators, our teachers to provide unconscious bias training, to provide equity leadership training, to really have the awareness, because as we know, it's kind of like, you don't know what you don't know. We all come from a place of positive intent. And so when we don't know what the things we're doing, not causing harm to children, we're not really aware of that sometimes, but the awareness, the education, we're really working hard as a district to provide professional development to our teachers, our staff, to call these things out so we can do the inside out work and say, hey, I have an implicit bias. I'm not having relationships with my kids that I should be having. How do I improve upon that? How do I build on that? So we're making concerted effort. Our leadership is awesome. They really are leading the charge with that. And I'm really excited. I always continue to say this. I've been in many districts. To be a district that really values equity and really values that the work needs to be done. And we need to, as a district, as a whole, work to just improve our outcomes for our students and families. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Sharon. We sure appreciate it. I want to honor, I want to make sure we have one more public comment. I think Mr. Reddish may want to give another comment. Possibly, we can just unmute Mr. Reddish if he has another comment. And if not, we're going to close out with Dr. Shelley Spessart. Mr. Reddish, did you have one last comment? We see your hand is up. Okay.
I would. I have used my experiences, historically speaking, to build on the future, the present and the future. I have never allowed anyone to, or gave anyone permission to put me down. I always looked at myself as good, better, best, but I didn't look myself to be above anyone. So in that respect, this has been a good survival theme for me. Don't let anybody rain on your parade. Don't let anyone put you down. Don't give them permission to do so. And if you do that, you're going to continue to have a good day. And for the rest of you on the panel, I want you to have a good tomorrow, because you are in control of that person that you see in the mirror. Look in the mirror in the morning and talk to yourself. Talk to yourself. Tell yourself what kind of day you're going to have. It will happen because you will make it happen. And good day to everyone. And I look forward to the next presentation.
Thank you again, Mr. Benjamin Reddish Jr. We appreciate your comments and encouragement. We needed that to close us out today. So with that, I want to thank again our panelists, our community, of course, who joined us, our panelists, Hazen and Raina, thank you for sharing that student voice. It's always phenomenal to share space with students. So thank you so much. We're honored to be in your presence. I want you to know that. We want to thank Elisha. Thank you so much for being on the panel today. Sharon, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Jillian, thank you so much. We sure appreciate you. Bruce, thank you for your historical perspective, sharing your truth. Carrie, you just really gave us a great insight that we needed to hear today, and that perspective about Black Lives Matter, just really impactful, and just appreciate your perspective. Gamal, as always, your positive energy, but your story helping us to unpack our biases, and just really appreciate you speaking your truth and always keeping equity at the forefront. Thank you. We really appreciate you, Monica, your passion, your encouragement. The day I met you back in our training, you just always, we get the passion and the intentionality, just appreciate sharing your story. Truly appreciate it. Detective Angie, thank you so much for standing with us, with leadership in Stockton, to really do hard work. We acknowledge that. Please continue to be safe, because we recognize your role in trying to keep us safe. So we do encourage you and keep you in our thoughts and prayers always. And so each of the staff who has made this happen, we want to thank you as well. We want to thank you so much for our interpreters, to behind the scenes. I think Veronica and Justin always tolerate me with all of this trying to moderate behind the scenes. It makes it a big deal to just keep me all in focus. I just appreciate all of you so much. And with that, I want to pass the virtual mic back to Dr. Spessard. I'm going to go ahead and share our contact information as you close out, and just want to appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of this this day. Just appreciate you all.
Well, on behalf of Stockton Unified, I just want to thank each and every one of you for being here, for speaking your truth, for your commitment to our youth, your commitment to our community. Just so impressed with your ability to get up here and speak your truth. Much easier said than done. We look forward to having many more panels. And Mr. Biederman, just, you can see he's on the chat. He is just so very impressed, and he is committed to the work. And so we just want to continue our efforts and hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful evening. Thank you so much. And one last person to thank you, Wancho, for being in the background as well. Appreciate you all.
Oh, Wancho, again. Yeah, thank you all. Have a great evening, everybody. Stay encouraged.
Bye, everyone.